So let's talk about Elizabeth Warren and another dumb thing that she's saying. Um, Not that she's any different than AOC or the Squad or anybody else in the progressive movement, but she's the poster child for it. Basically, these people think they're geniuses. They make little memes. They're showing that oil profits, oil companies are making a ton of profits right now, and which coincides with oil price being really high. Therefore, they're just price gouging, right? As if there's no other factors that are involved. Here's her logic. Basically, we're not gonna use Putin's oil. Therefore, there's going to be less of it. So now the price of oil has been bid up, and therefore oil companies are making windfall profits, and American customers are suffering. Therefore, we need to tax this profit away from them. But in reality, if you look at a chart, oil prices started going up as soon as Biden won. Well, why? Well, if Trump would have won, he would have approved all these pipelines. That means there would have been more demand, or I mean more supply, coming from Keystone Pipeline and other developments. So the price of oil would have, it would have stayed low because they knew that there's a bunch of supply coming because the markets are forward looking. As soon as Biden won, and because he's beholden to the quote unquote green demographic, and he was going to cut all these end all those projects. Well, obviously the market knew there's going to be less and less oil. The price start rising. Now the price really jumped off because of the ban on Putin's oil. But even before that, the price was going up. Now, what she fails to mention is, well, first of all, half of all the profits that oil companies make goes back into equipment maintenance and exploration. Um, when the government controls oil production, like in Venezuela, well, they just didn't properly invest enough into maintaining the infrastructure, and actually ran out of oil. Like they had to import oil. Their capacity went to zero. So that one, you want private companies doing that. And two, where was she when a bunch of oil companies in America went bankrupt? Yes, oil prices go up and down. It fluctuates. And maybe 10 years ago or 8 years ago, oil prices tanked, and all this infrastructure that America was building, all those fracking companies, they went bust. People lost a ton of money. So how the game is played. In order these investing in oil is very uncertain. Part of the reason is these idiot politicians. They can't, depending on who's elected or what type of green proposals or ideas they're going to have. Well, that's very unstable. So if you're going to invest money in oil, it's very risky. So you would demand a higher return for all this risk. So that doesn't help. But yeah, these oil companies, they could lose a ton of money because of oil. The price of oil falls below a certain value, right? And a lot of people got wiped out. So it only makes sense that people who still stayed in business and suffered through all the losses get to replenish their coffers, get to make money. Therefore, when the oil goes back down, or the oil price or carbon credit or whatever the government imposes, they can keep going, right? And on top of that, most importantly, the cure for high prices are high prices. If oil companies are making a killing, making all this money, and oil prices are high, well, that's going to attract other oil producers to, one, it's going to attract other producers to create oil and get in on these high profits. And two, that's going to make other green energies or other energy investments more lucrative because, like, hey, other like maybe solar or wind or whatever, it's really an expensive energy to create, But if oil is so high, then maybe even the green energy could be possibly at a certain price. If the oil goes up high enough, then maybe electric cars, like consumers, would switch over naturally to electric cars because the electric cars would actually be like more in demand because they'd be more efficient for the consumer. Of course, she would not ever understand this, so she's demagoguing here. Where does it start here? What she calls gouging is actually demand adjusting to supply. She also forgets that higher profits margins strongly incentivize entrepreneurs to supply more of a good on the market, thus eventually driving down prices through competition. That's like with well, that's why the like with the real estate with the rents, high rents in LA and New York. Those rents are super high, and developers would love to build more housing, but the government prevents that with zoning laws and all sorts of laws, so new supply cannot be created. And that's why they still have higher prices. So yes, higher prices would lead to other companies jumping in and pushing down prices unless the government specifically made it illegal. Leaving aside the fact that Senator has evidently never met a corporate tax she didn't want to hike, history shows that imposing a windfall profits tax on oil is particularly short-sighted. As part of his administration's response to the Iran oil shock that tripled the price of petroleum in 1979, President Jimmy Carter championed the crude oil windfall profits tax of the 1980s. And the article goes on to say that's basically they shot themselves in the foot with that. Less oil was provided. Well, it didn't really make that much, didn't really bring in the government that much tax revenue. And also notice the perverse effects here. So you can invest in oil, and when the oil price craters, well, too bad, so sad, you lost all your money. But if the oil price spikes and you actually make, you know what I mean, you make a good calculation, well, the government gets jealous and and uh, um, and takes away all your windfall profits. So it's like you need a big reward. The more risky an investment is, the more of a reward you need. Otherwise, nothing's going to be made. If the downside is you losing all your money and the reward is like capped, then what's the point? Are these people completely ignorant? The main purpose of the tax was to recoup for the government much of the revenue that would have otherwise gone to the oil industry as a result of their of decontrol of oil prices. What do you mean? That's so bizarre. The main purpose of the tax was to recoup for the federal government much of the revenue. What do you mean recoup? That's not the government's money to begin with. That report was founded in the windfall profits tax. WPT raised far less money than projected by the Carter administration, while simultaneously reducing the amount of domestic oil that would have otherwise been supplied. Warren's proposal would doubtlessly achieve the same result: less domestic production, more dependence on foreign oil, high prices at the pump, and negligible tax revenue. And what really puts sand in my gears is this. If that's anything conservative on the right, the fact checkers swarm on social media all over this. But when Elizabeth Warren puts out this BS that's already been tried before and failed, there's never a fact check under her tweet. Like, this is a BS, or this has been tried, this is a failure. You know, this is... No, they'll never fact check her. In the short run, consumers are going to feel the pain in the gas pump as gasoline prices soar. In the long run, higher prices will draw forth more investments in production capacity and supplies will increase. Well, if gas is in short supply, then yes, gas prices should go up. That's the proper market procedure. Therefore, people who actually really need to, or it's essential for them, and people who don't really, maybe not, they're just going on joyrides or don't really need to use the gas or whatever. The crash price, they're going to do some other cheaper entertainment. This is all part of the system. The, the prospect of a higher profit margin is already encouraging investment in domestic oil production. As a minor example, this dynamic New York Times reports, somebody's quoted, "Everything I've got is on and going at full speed." Darren Wallace, chief executive of Columbus Oil Company, an Oklahoma operator with 25 oil wells. Miss Wallace said said she had been holding back an investment of $100,000 to fix one well, but that's about to change. When the oil's at 60, I'm not gonna do that, but I'm just about ready to put the work in on it. At 100 a barrel, we could put that sucker back to work. If Warren's tax was enacted, Wallace would most likely keep that 100K in her pocket or find more profitable opportunities in which to invest. Of course, any of these. Why can't we? Is it possible? Can we just have a natural experiment with like we ship all the like the Elizabeth Warrens and the Bernie Sanders just to one state and one country and just let them go at it? Let them make this their socialist utopia. It's like it just really disconcerting that these people are running the government. For people that economically literate people that understand that this is just a terrible idea and have to suffer through their shit.